Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. On this 26th day of October 2020, I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, winter storm warning continues there for the Upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country area for until overnight tonight. It continues through the night tonight due to end at 7 a.m. Tuesday morning, and that's for an additional 1 to 3 inches of snow to fall, and maybe some areas might have an additional 5 inches of snow, but and that's about it. Heaviest snow probably already has fallen. And otherwise, we've got winter weather advisories for the greater Fairbanks area, the greater Tanana area, into the central and eastern Alaska range, as well as the Copper River Basin. And that ends at 6 p.m. there for the Copper River Basin zone there, and up to the north, Alaska Range and the Tanana Valley area. That's out through the night tonight until about early tomorrow morning, like as the warning area is. Otherwise, that's it for the watches, warnings, and advisories for the state of Alaska today. And moving to satellite imagery, you can see that very active system, low pressure, driving northeastward there, right in toward Dawson, with the front just passing Dawson, the occluded front there, dragging back down toward roughly around Yakutat this afternoon, maybe a little farther inland than that. And back to the west, some clouds, lighter precipitation, snow showers, and the heavy rains into the southeast coast that push some moisture up from the southeast, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of rain falling in across actually a fairly large area of the southeast coast over the last 24 hours. Those 24-hour precipitation amounts. Pretty good snow in the Copper River Basin. Gulkana had roughly anywhere from 6 to 8 inches of snow, and there were 3 to 5 inches in the Fairbanks area. And where it didn't snow, there was a fair amount of rain, with Port Mullet picking up over an inch and just under an inch, or either side of an inch of rain in Anchorage in the last 24 hours, as well as areas up to the north, about 2/3 of an inch to 3/4 falling in the Susitna Valley. And then that tapers off back out to the west, some clearing with higher pressure over the Pribilof Islands, eastern Aleutians, and then a weakening front spreading a little bit of moisture in toward the Adak and Atka area there, then another break, and then the main low center associated with that front pushing a couple of bands of showers into the Shemiat 2 area. And moving on to the chart today, you can see one center up into the Northwest Territories there, and that front pushing into the southeast coast currently. Winds on the back side of that kicking up. Kodiak Island, or at Kodiak State Airport, winds west-southwest gusting 40 miles an hour this afternoon, and with clear skies, a downsloping wind banking any shower activity up along the Aleutian Range there. And same sort of pattern starting to develop there for the Kenai Peninsula as well, with Homer seeing west-southwest winds gusting to 40 miles an hour also this afternoon into Kachemak Bay. And otherwise, starting to dry out over Cook Inlet with rain and snow showers tending to, they are decreasing this afternoon. Susitna Valley, especially over northern Cook Inlet, and then the snow continues up over the eastern interior, and that'll continue through tonight. And you can see also a weak or a trough drops into the western or to the central Arctic coast and extends southwestward to the northwest coast. So another band of snow will push into those areas tonight, and yet another one just behind that, right on its heels. Not all coming over the top of that Arctic high over the Russian Far East, which actually ridges into another center there over the Bering Sea and Pribilofs. And on the east side of that ridge, still some moisture coming down the east side out of the northwest. So some rain and snow showers, Alaska Peninsula, maybe some light sprinkle-type precipitation for Unalaska Island to, say, Cold Bay, Nelson Lagoon. And that weakening front continues to really wash out there into the central Aleutians with light rain, fog, and drizzle. And definitely a big drop-off in the snow shower activity over southern Alaska, mostly along the Alaska Range now. And again, after midnight, the precipitation really led up even in the Tanana Valley there. But light snow will continue throughout much of the night from the, say, just south of Eagle across the 40-mile country down into the eastern Copper River Basin areas. And winds continue to diminish and rainfall becomes lighter for the southeast coast. Outlook for tomorrow, southwest flow continues with a low kind of hung up there in the Gulf of Alaska. And with southwest flow, that's a wet weather pattern for the panhandle, and it'll probably be periods of rain, central and northern southeast coast, maybe some mixed precipitation, say Haines to Skagway, maybe even Yakutat to Cordova, but those amounts will be light. And then it'll be a little more showery and lighter precipitation down toward Dixon entrance. Otherwise, look for partly sunny skies. South central Alaska tomorrow, dry with sunshine and lighter winds for Kodiak Island. Isolated snow showers eastern Copper River Basin, but snow showers increase as you head northwest there with a series of troughs bringing bands of snow in across Arctic coast, North Slope, Brooks Range, and even into the western interior. And that front holds together enough out in the Bering Sea that a narrow weak band of light rain and no wind comes into the Atka area, fair over the eastern Aleutians. And then the remnants of that front drag some showers into the Fox Islands and Pribilofs. Isolated showers southwest coast along that trough into the central interior, and some more light snow and snow shower activity along the North Slope and Arctic coast. And again, it stays unsettled and damp over the panhandle. For the lows tonight, anywhere from 0 or 5 below to 5 above northeast interior areas. Otherwise, mid to upper 20s, especially as you get out toward the southwest coast. Lows will be right around the frost point from St. Lawrence Island to King Salmon. Otherwise, mid-30s, lower 40s, Alaska Peninsula. And into the 20s, south central Alaska. Lower to mid-40s for the panhandle, followed by highs tomorrow. Mid-40s to lower 50s for the southeast coast. And 20s for the Copper River Basin. 30s, south central Alaska. Mid-20s in the Tanana Valley. A little cooler toward Northway and Tok. Eagle, high 19 in the teens. Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley areas and lower teens in the eastern Brooks Range. Near 30 on the Arctic coast and mid-40s out west. Lows, lower 40s for Shemya, lower 40s for Nikolsky, otherwise in the 30s for the Bering Sea, northern Bering Sea, upper 20s. And again, about, say, 10 below to 5 above up in the coldest northeastern part of the state. And Copper River Basin, highs near 20.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First flying weather graphic Tuesday morning, IFR, central western Arctic coast, including the Noatak Valley, and the northwest coast there. Kivalina, Marshall VFR, Kotzebue, Selawik right on the edge there, and north side of the Seward Peninsula into the Bering Strait, IFR. South of the strait, though, much of the Bering Sea, Marshall VFR, and then a zone of IFR there with that slowly weakening frontal boundary that gets kind of hung up there with central Aleutian, southwest Bering. And Marshall VFR, Bristol Bay, VFR, south side of the Alaska Peninsula, Pacific side, all of Kodiak Island, and western Cook Inlet from the inlet westward to the Alaska Range and northward through the Susitna Valley. But starting out marginal for the Kenai Peninsula, Turnagain, Knik Arms, Madanuska Valley, and IFR over the central eastern Copper River Basin down toward Yakutat, and areas of the Panhandle seeing some IFR to start, but mostly marginal VFR for the afternoon, central and southern southeast coast with lingering IFR over toward the eastern border, and especially at Lynn Canal Glacier Bayway, and also IFR holding along the eastern North Gulf coast, westward to about Cordova, a little west of Cordova, but Valdez and Whittier, Portage, Passes Canal, all in the marginal VFR zone, as well as the Copper River Basin. And VFR, Madanuska, Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, VFR, Sitkinak Island, marginal. And that band of IFR out over the Bering Sea kind of narrowing as it slides eastward there, getting east of Atka by tomorrow afternoon. Marginal VFR, northern Bering Sea becomes IFR, St. Lawrence Island, across Norton Sound, and most of the Seward Peninsula, but Shishmaref, marginal VFR, northwest coast, Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley, marginal. And all along the Yukon River Valley area from the Delta will be marginal VFR until it starts angling southeast toward Eagle, and then you're into the VFR zone, Upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, right on down the Kuskokwim Valley to Togiak Bay, Dillingham, and those areas, IFR eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And then for Wednesday morning, IFR eastern Beaufort Sea coast, eastern North Slope into the Brooks Range, and a narrow band of VFR there, say from Arctic Village, southwestern across the northern Koyukuk Valley, maybe it's part of the Kobuk Valley on out toward the Nulato Hills and, Norton Sound. And for the St. Lawrence Island area, it looks VFR, Nome, Golovin, White Mountain, VFR. Otherwise, IFR there over the Bering Sea, north of the west central Aleutians, and then a narrow band extending down just west of the Pribilofs to Nikolsky, Unmak Island, marginal VFR for the Alaska Peninsula, VFR Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island VFR, Cook Inlet, south central Alaska, at least most of the Kenai Peninsula VFR, and that extends into the northwestern Copper River Basin. We've got some IFR hung up there for the central interior into the northern Kuskokwim Valley, northeastward across the greater Fairbanks area, White Mountains, on up to, say, Eagle northward, and then also some IFR for the eastern North Gulf Coast, Yakutat into the northern Panhandle, and marginal VFR for the afternoon for most of the southeast coast. Few areas of lingering IFR, but nothing significant over toward the border. And a good swath of VFR, Kodiak Island right up across the Barrens, Prince William Sound, all of the Kenai Peninsula, Manuscus is sitting in the Valley, Cook Inlet. Then you get up to the Alaska Range and conditions deteriorate. Marginal VFR around about the entire range there into the Copper River Basin with some spotty areas of IFR. And then some improving or expanding VFR over the northern interior to the Yukon Delta, Norton Sound. But pretty solid in the marginal VFR for the North Slope Arctic Coast and a patch of IFR for the eastern Brooks Range. And most marginal VFR about sums it up for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And for the passes tomorrow, Anatuvik and Adigan, both VFR becoming, or I'm sorry, let me switch that around. VFR becoming IFR for both passes. And Lake Clark and Mara, as the moisture drops in from the northwest, Lake Clark and Mara, marginal VFR early, becoming VFR most of the day. Same trend for rainy, early marginal conditions become VFR. Windy, marginal VFR to VFR. Improving for Isabel quite markedly, starting out IFR, then becoming VFR. Mentasta, not quite the improvement. IFR becomes marginal, a little bit not as well as Isabel. And Tanita, marginal VFR to VFR Portage. Same forecast, Chilcoot and White, IFR all day long. Freezing levels at the surface now up into the north of the Bering Strait there, and then hugging the southwest coast, a little inland along the North Gulf Coast. And that tight gradient now mostly shifting southward there as a jet stream kind of a little farther south of the Panhandle, 2,000 to 6,000 feet out west. Icing, really nothing too significant. An area coming onto the western Arctic coast, and jet stream cutting across the southern Panhandle and jumping quickly to turbulence. Some areas there along the eastern Alaska Range and the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay.
You guys got everything tied down back there? Yeah. Yep. We're going through the lee of St. Elias, so there might be some turbulence.
Fasten seatbelt sign on.
Well, who am I to tell you what to do?
There are tens of thousands of glaciers in Alaska. Some stunning cliffhangers, others wide glaciers that come down to meet the ocean tides. Some, like this one we flew over in August, are easily visible from low Earth orbit and are mesmerizing from 1,000 feet above, and have trees growing on top of their soil-laden boundaries. Those glaciers, although they represent only a fraction of the world's ice, are contributing much more than their share to sea level rise. Chris Larson and his colleagues have repeatedly measured 220 of them in a small single-engine otter, measuring their height with lasers and their depth with radar, and watching them change from season to season and year to year. But Alaskan glaciers are also different. We're only just figuring out how they all behave. Data from flights like these, part of NASA's Operation Icebridge, can help fill the gaps. Chris and radar specialist Martine Trufer are both from the University of Alaska Fairbanks and both seasoned Alaskan pilots. but they rely on their good friend and legendary bush pilot Paul Kloss and his 35,000 hours in the cockpit to fly the incredibly demanding flight lines the mission requires.
And does it help you guys being pilots too?
I would like to think so, but watching Paul fly and seeing what he does, it's kind of like trying to learn quantum mechanics in kindergarten.
You know, I can fly my airplane around, but just seeing what Paul does in this extremely challenging environment in the mountains while trying to follow a specific flight line at a specific altitude above ground, negotiating winds, topography, maybe occasional low-level clouds that you have to get around, and just managing all that is just several levels above what I could do as a pilot.
Well, I think the first time I came here to this park, I was probably 4 years old with my father. I've been blessed to be able to fly in lots of places in the world, all over the place actually, almost every continent. I guess I'm always looking for some place that might be better than this, but I haven't found it.
Paul's plane is about 60 years old and is the first single-engine Otter ever retrofitted with a 1,000 horsepower engine, which makes takeoffs feel effortless and gives Paul the ability to negotiate wild terrain, which he certainly did during the first 2 incredible science flights of this campaign. And with sunny skies and relatively calm air, we covered 3 vastly different pieces of ice. While Paul fueled up the plane, Chris gave us a preview of the day's science and scenery.
So it has one of the greatest coastal reliefs anywhere in the world. So it's between the ocean and the summit of Mount St. Elias, which is 18,008 feet high. It's less than 10 miles. There's a stupendous amount of mountain right off the ocean. It's hard to beat it anywhere in the world. It might be the prettiest for me. It's absolutely stunning. From here in McCarthy, we'll cross one of the bigger precipitation gradients in Alaska too. Here it's about 10 inches of precipitation a year, and we'll go over to an area where it's on the order of 200 inches per year. So it's from one of the driest parts of Alaska to one of the wettest parts of Alaska in about 45 minutes flight time.
Whoa, that's pretty good.
That's awesome. You want to do Tyndall next?
Sure. Where you want?
If the winds are calm now, might as well grab it.
First, we came to the rugged landscape of Icy Bay, which not that long ago wasn't a bay at all. It was filled with ice. Tidewater glaciers in this region can make dramatic advances and retreats as they feed on high rates of snowfall and then retreat as they're melted by warm ocean waters. Like the Tyndall Glacier seen here, most of these glaciers have retreated dramatically over the last 100 years. But nearby Yahtzee Glacier, after years of retreat, is currently the most rapidly advancing glacier in Alaska. Overall, though, the Icebridge Alaska surveys, from the Denali region in the north to the Juneau ice field in the southeast, have documented pretty substantial thinning of glacial ice. Areas seen here in orange and red show between about 10 and 15 feet of thinning per year.
There's a nice waterfall up there from the hanging ice.
We very first started profiling this, Paul, this gravel fan in the one in the valley next to it didn't exist.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
this was
look
deep.
at all the good landing spots here.
Yeah,
There's no place to land here before.
no, it was deep water.
After covering several of Icy Bay's glaciers, given that it was time for lunch, just like that, we landed in this unforgettable spot. Flying eastward, leaving Icy Bay behind, we came to the mighty Malaspina, one of the Earth's great examples of a Piedmont glacier that spills out like pancake batter onto a broad plain as it approaches the sea. It surges at uneven intervals, creating dramatic patterns on its surface as it distorts the moraines of rock and soil borne along by the glacier. The Malaspina is less dynamic than the Yahtzee and is only melting at about the average rate for Alaska. But that could change quickly.
It has the potential for being one of the bigger geographic evolutions in Alaska. Certainly my son will be able to witness some big geography changes there. There's potential for it being connected with the ocean through some narrow lagoons, estuaries, which would take a little bit of coastal erosion, but it's not too hard to imagine that where the Malaspina Glacier is now could become a large bay.
The data that Martine's radar provides could reveal how vulnerable the Malaspina is to melting by the nearby ocean. Here we see the radar returns from the surface of the glacier, and here is something that Chris's lasers can't see, the rocky bed of the glacier, giving us both clues as to what's happening under the ice, as well as a measurement of its thickness. Finally, we came to the Yakutat ice field, 300 square miles of absolutely doomed ice perched high in the mountains. Researchers even debate how this ice field came to be at all, since in its current configuration, it's hard to imagine how it could capture enough snow to form glacial ice. And so, even if the Arctic weren't warming faster than the rest of the planet, this area would be likely to melt within a century or two. But with many other glaciers, it's easier to see the connection between a warming planet and ice loss. Thanks to data from IceBridge and other surveys, we now have a good estimate of the current rate of loss from Alaskan glaciers, 75 gigatons a year. While airborne observations over Alaskan glaciers have provided a rich record of change in the area, those efforts are now augmented by NASA's newest ice measuring tool, ICESat-2. With 6 laser beams of its own, and orbiting the Earth every 90 minutes, the satellite will carry on the record of Alaskan change. For their part, Chris and his team will continue to do their surveys for at least the next 2 years, helping to validate the ICESat-2 data and make further detailed observations over the stunning glaciers of Alaska.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Sea ice analysis today, kind of the North Pole shot, as we call it. Again, solid ice all the way down to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and then thins out as you head up toward the central coast there, and then some gradually, looks like growing slowly, ice conditions on the west side, and even in around Kotzebue Sound there, you can see on the northwest coast, ice continues to slowly increase. And for the coastal water forecasts, west winds for the south coast, 15 to 20 knots, seas 11 to 12 feet, and south 10 for Clarence Strait, and 20 knots out of the south for the Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, and Stevens Passage area, with seas at about 4 feet. And for the north coast, we're looking at small craft advisories, west-southwest, 25 knots with 13-foot seas. And for the outlook on Wednesday, south winds, 10 knots for Lynn Canal, central and southern inside waters, variable winds at 10 knots with 2-foot seas, and west-southwest at 10 for the south coast. And the north coast there, winds will be out of the southwest at 15 with 8-foot seas. And for the Prince William Sound zone, small craft advisories tomorrow, northwest winds 25 knots, and northwest also 25 for the western North Gulf Coast, Middleton Island area, northwest at 20 with 12-foot seas. Small craft advisories for northwest winds 30 knots for the Barren Islands, and gales for Kamishak Bay, westerly sustained 35 knots, and Cook Inlet, northerlies 10 to 15. Outlook for Wednesday, Prince William Sound, lighter winds north at 10, 2-foot seas, north winds 10 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast, western coast there north at 15, and Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, northwest at 20, Cook Inlet north at 15. Bristol Bay, northwest winds 20 knots tomorrow, Alaska Peninsula, northwest or west-northwest at 15 with 4 to 6-foot seas. Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, small craft advisories, westerlies 25 knots with 5 to 10-foot seas. And for the Wednesday outlook for Kodiak Island, got northwest winds 15 to 20 knots and seas 2 to 6 feet. And then pretty light winds for the Alaska Peninsula, west to north, about 10 knots, and Bristol Bay, north winds at 15. For the eastern Aleutians tomorrow, front Alaska Island, south winds 10 knots, Unmak Island, south at 15, And for AKwx, south to southwest 15 knots, and Amchitka, west winds at 15, Kiska shimmying at 2. Look for southwest breezes at 20 knots with 7-foot seas. And for the Wednesday time frame, small craft advisories from Kiska to Shimia, northeast at 30 knots with 8-foot seas, and southeast at 45 knots. Pretty brisk there from Adak to Amchitka. And also south of Adak and Atka, looking at 45-knot winds from the south, but the Bering Sea side of the islands there, south at 30. On Alaska Island, south to southeast, 15 knots, and Umak Island, west-southwest, 20 to 25 knots. Southwest coast tomorrow, light northwest winds, 10 to 15 knots with 3 to 4 foot seas. Light southerlies for the Pribilofs, northwest 15, St. Matthew Island, St. Lawrence Island, west at 15. And then on Wednesday, northerlies at 15 knots, St. Lawrence Island, northeast at 15 there for the southwest coast, or Yukon Delta coast. South of Nunivak Island to be out of the north at 15. Pribilofs, east winds 20, seas 5 feet, north 20 for St. Matthew Island with 5-foot seas. And the central and western Arctic coast tomorrow, west winds 20 knots. East side, not much different, west winds 15 to 20 knots. And from Cape Thompson down to Wales, we're looking at northerlies at 25 knots with 5-foot seas. And moving on to Wednesday, those will come down to 15 out of the northwest from Wales to Cape Thompson. And then northwest winds 20 knots from Cape Thompson, stay up to Point Ley. Central Arctic coast north 15. East side there, west-northwest at 20 knots. For tonight, again, first in a series of troughs will bring light snow and surges onto the western Arctic coast, pushing eastward to the central coast later tonight, and possibly as far south as the northern Seward Peninsula area in the Strait. Again, that'll be toward morning. Dry in between there. You can see quite a dry area there, all the way down to an area of diminishing snow along the Alaska Range and the Tanana Valley, as light snow persists over the eastern Copper River Basin and stays showery. So lighter winds in store for the Panhandle, lighter rain. Weak front out over the Aleutians continues to weaken, but holds together enough to keep a band of moisture spreading eastward there, as a weak area high pressure shifts eastward as well, so that could result in a mostly sunny day with light winds for the eastern Aleutians, maybe the Pribilofs as well, and chillier and drier and a little breezy, but not too bad for southern Alaska, and still bands of snow coming in with west-northwest flow for the northern half of the state, or northern third of the state, and wet weather pattern continues for the Panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.